An elderly woman was forced out of her own home with gentle words and a false smile. Alone and aimless, she found herself in the rain, unaware that life was about to take a turn. Upon opening an old forgotten box, she discovered she was never who she imagined herself to be. Now, with power in her hands, she returns, not for revenge, but to teach what true love is. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear. The rising sun over Brighton stained the windows of the old colonial house in the Kemptown neighborhood with gold. Mrs. Ramona Evans, 72 years old, opened the living room curtains with her usual care, observing the Sussex Sea stretching in the distance. The house, a three-story mansion built in the stately style, held the memories of a lifetime. Each IPE wood floorboard that creaked under her bare feet told stories of parties, laughter, tears, and the love shared with her late husband, Sebastian. "Good morning, my dear," she whispered to the framed portrait on the wall as she did every morning. Sebastian smiled in the black and white photograph, eternally young, beside the fishing boat they bought with their savings from their first year of marriage. "The sky is clear today. You would have loved to see this." In the kitchen with Portuguese tiles, Ramona prepared her breakfast. The aroma of strong coffee mixed with that of the cheese buns baking in the oven. She maintained the culinary traditions she had learned from her mother, despite the protests of her daughter-in-law, Patricia, who considered those habits too old-fashioned for a house like theirs. The sound of hurried footsteps interrupted her thoughts. Leo, her only son, entered the kitchen adjusting the tie of his executive uniform. At 45, he was the CEO of one of the largest construction companies in Sussex, an empire that began with Sebastian's small business decades ago. "Mother, you shouldn't be exerting yourself like this. We hired Josephine precisely to take care of these things," he said, grabbing a cup of coffee. "Son, cooking isn't an effort for me, it's what keeps me alive," Ramona replied, serving him a piece of cornmeal cake. "Besides, Josephine doesn't arrive until 8. Leo sighed, consulting his imported wristwatch. "You should think about resting more. I'm worried about your health." Before Ramona could respond, Patricia appeared at the kitchen door. The 35-year-old woman, with impeccably straightened hair and designer clothes, looked disdainfully at the domestic scene. "Leo, you're going to be late for the investor meeting," she said, ignoring her mother-in-law. "And that smell of frying so early in the morning? It's not good for your blood pressure." Ramona lowered her eyes, feeling diminished. In recent months, the tension between her and her daughter-in-law had increased considerably. Since Patricia, the daughter of a failed banker, married Leo 5 years ago, the family dynamic had changed. Gradually, the young woman gained space and influence, renovating the house's decor, changing the employees' routine, and, more subtly, driving a wedge between mother and son. "I'm off then," Leo said, quickly kissing his mother's forehead. "Patricia is right about the meeting. We'll talk later, Mother." When they were alone, silence weighed heavily in the kitchen. Patricia critically analyzed the environment. "Mrs. Evans, we need to talk about some changes here at home," she began, sitting at the edge of the solid wood table that had passed through generations of the Evans family. "This house needs urgent renovation. Those old tiles, this floor, it's all outdated. Leo's friends, important people in Sussex society, come to visit us, and frankly, this place looks like a museum." Ramona felt a tightening in her chest. "This house has history, Patricia. Sebastian and I built—" I know," her daughter-in-law interrupted with an impatient gesture. "You tell us that story every week, but time passes, things evolve. Leo deserves to live in an environment that reflects his current status. Don't you agree?" Without waiting for a response, Patricia continued, "In fact, I've already talked to him about another delicate matter. Don't you think it would be better for you to live somewhere more suitable for your age? A smaller apartment, perhaps? Or that retirement home in Withdean? It's very elegant, you know, only for people of class." Ramona paled. "You want me to leave my own home?" "It's not quite like that," Patricia replied with false sweetness. "We're worried about you. This house is too big, it has stairs, and honestly, your memory isn't very good lately, is it? Last week you forgot the stove on." "It was just once," Ramona defended herself, feeling indignation grow. "I've lived here for 50 years. I know every corner, every story." "Exactly," Patricia cut in. "You live in the past. Don't you realize how that affects Leo? He feels guilty for wanting to modernize things. He's always worried, torn between respect for you and the family's future. The words hit Ramona like precise arrows. Could it be true? Was she being a burden to her son? The doubts planted by Patricia, watered daily with small comments and insinuations, began to blossom. That night, when Leo returned from work, Ramona noticed something different in his behavior. He seemed nervous, avoiding her gaze during dinner. Patricia, on the other hand, was especially attentive to her husband, serving him wine and massaging his tense shoulders. "Mother," he finally began, after Josephine cleared the dessert plates. "We need to talk about something important." Ramona felt her heart quicken. She knew that tone. It was the same one Sebastian used when he had difficult news to deliver. "What is it, my son?" Leo cleared his throat, looking at his wife for support. Patricia nodded discreetly, encouraging him. "We're planning a complete renovation of the house. It will be a long, noisy process with many workers. We thought it wouldn't be comfortable for you to stay here during that period." "And where would I go?" Ramona asked, her voice almost fading. "We found a wonderful place," Patricia interjected, handing her a colorful brochure. "It's a residence for distinguished ladies in Preston Park. It has 24-hour medical assistance, cultural activities, all the best." Ramona looked at the paper in her trembling hands. The photograph showed a white aseptic building with smiling elderly people in chairs arranged in a circle. "For how long?" she asked, trying to maintain her composure. Leo and Patricia exchanged quick glances. "Well, Mother," her son replied, using the diminutive for the first time in years, "we thought it might be better for you to stay there permanently. The house will be very different after the renovation, with new stairs, modern decor. You could have an accident." The truth finally revealed itself, raw and stark like the midday sun in the arid plains. It wasn't a temporary change. It was an expulsion. That night, alone in her room, Ramona cried silently, embracing Sebastian's portrait. "What do I do now, my dear?" she asked the silence. Outside, the moon illuminated the Sussex sea, indifferent to the drama unfolding in the house on the hill. The next day, a light rain fell over Brighton as Ramona began to pack her things. She wouldn't take much. A few clothes, photographs, the wooden rosary that had belonged to her mother, and an old cedar box she kept at the bottom of the closet, protected by a handmade lace cloth. The rain had intensified when the taxi stopped in front of St. Lucia residence in Preston Park. Leo helped his mother out, while Patricia supervised the driver carrying the two modest suitcases. The white building, exactly as in the brochure, stood impersonal and cold. "You'll like it here," Leo assured her, forcing an enthusiasm he didn't feel. "There are doctors, nurses, company." Ramona observed everything in silence. In her brown eyes, the pain of rejection mixed with the dignity she had always carried. Upon entering the lobby, she was greeted by a woman in a white coat and a rehearsed smile. "Welcome, Mrs. Evans. I'm Francis, the coordinator. We are very happy to have you." The admission process was quick. Patricia signed the papers, settled the monthly fees, and soon Ramona was led to room 203 on the second floor. It was a small space, with a single bed, a wardrobe, an armchair, and a window overlooking a dull inner courtyard. "See, Mother, there's even a television," Leo pointed out, increasingly uncomfortable. "We'll let you settle in," Patricia said, checking her wristwatch. "We have that engagement, remember, darling?" "What engagement?" Leo questioned, confused. "Dinner with the Hamilton Montgomerys," she whispered, giving him a significant look. "Ah, yes," he agreed, giving in. "Mother, we need to go. We'll come back tomorrow to see how you are, okay?" Ramona nodded, unable to speak. When the door closed, leaving her finally alone, the tears she had held back all morning ran freely down her wrinkled face. She sat on the edge of the hard bed, looking at the bare walls, trying to find something in them that resembled a home. In the hallway on the way to the elevator, Leo suddenly stopped. "We shouldn't leave her like this on the first day. Maybe we could cancel dinner." Patricia held his arm firmly. "Leo, let's be practical. Your mother needs to adapt to the new reality. If we stay here, we'll only make things more difficult. And the Hamilton Montgomerys are essential for us to close that contract." Reluctantly, he agreed, and headed towards the parking lot. The first week at the residence was a nightmare for Ramona. Meals served at rigid times, forced recreational activities, the the constant noise of the television in the common room. Everything left her exhausted. At night, lying in the strange bed, she recalled the house in Kemptown, imagining which walls might have already been knocked down, which memories might have been swept away to make room for the modern that Patricia so desired. On Sunday, when Leo and Patricia came to visit her, they noticed the change. Ramona was thinner, with deep dark circles under her eyes and a distant look. "Mother, are you all right?" Leo asked, genuinely concerned. "I'm adapting, son," she replied in a weak voice. "Mrs. Evans needs time," Francis interjected, passing by in the corridor. "It's normal in the first few days. Soon she'll make friends and feel at home." But home was precisely what Ramona didn't feel in that place. Home was the smell of jasmine in the backyard, the creak of the wooden floor, the sound of waves in the distance. Home was the memories of Sebastian, dinners with friends, the room where Leo took his first steps. The next morning, after a sleepless night, Ramona made a decision. She wouldn't stay there. With renewed determination, she packed her few belongings and waited for the opportune moment. During breakfast, while the other residents were busy with group physiotherapy, she simply walked out the front door, unnoticed. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained cloudy, promising more water. Ramona walked slowly along Marine Drive, with no specific destination. Her small burst of rebellion soon gave way to practical reality. Where would she go? She didn't have enough money to rent a place, and her pride prevented her from seeking out the few friends she still kept. Exhausted after a few hours of walking, she sat on a bench on the Brighton seafront promenade. That's when the rain returned, first a few drops, then a downpour that drenched her completely. She tried to take shelter under a closed kiosk, but it was too late. Her clothes were soaked and she shivered with cold. "Madam, are you all right?" A gentle voice interrupted her thoughts. Ramona looked up and saw a middle-aged black woman with a colorful umbrella. Beside her, a tall man carried shopping bags. I'm just waiting for the rain to pass," Ramona replied, trying to maintain her dignity. "In this storm? You'll get sick," the woman said, concerned. "Adeline, my name is Adeline, and this is my husband, George." George nodded, equally concerned. "You don't look well at all. Do you live nearby?" Ramona hesitated. What would she say? That she had been expelled from her own home by her son? That she had fled a retirement home? Before she could elaborate a convincing answer, a strong dizziness hit her. The world spun and everything went dark. When she regained consciousness, she was lying on a simple bed covered by a colorful patchwork quilt. The room was small but cozy, with light yellow walls and a window that showed a sky already clear from the storm. "Thank God you woke up," Adeline said, entering the room with a steaming cup. "I took the liberty of changing your wet clothes. I hope you don't mind." "Where am I?" Ramona asked, confused. "In our house in Whitehawk. George carried you in his arms when you fainted. We thought it best not to call an ambulance before knowing what was happening." Ramona sat up in bed, accepting the cup of lemon balm tea Adeline offered her. The house was simple, very different from the Kemptown mansion, but it had a warmth, a soul that St. Lucia residents would never have. "Thank you for your kindness," she said, feeling tears form. "I don't know how to thank you." "No need to thank us," George replied, appearing at the door. "Anyone would do the same." But Ramona knew that wasn't true. Not everyone would have taken in an unknown elderly woman fainted on a park bench. In the following days, recovering from the cold she had caught in the rain, Ramona gradually revealed her story to Adeline and George. The couple listened to everything with attention and respect, without judgment. "You can stay with us as long as you need," Adeline offered, after hearing the full account. "We don't have much, but what we have, we share with joy." "I can't accept," Ramona protested. "You've already done too much. I have some savings. I can rent a small room." "No way," George interrupted, with his grave, measured voice. "My mother always said that when God sends a guest, he also sends food for them. You stay until you decide what to do." Adeline and George's house was the opposite of Ramona's mansion, small with simple furniture, in a working-class neighborhood of Brighton. George worked as a construction foreman, and Adeline sold acarajé on Hove Beach. They had 3 adult children, all living in other cities. The house, now emptier, gained new life with Ramona's presence. Adeline found in her guest a companion for cooking, Ramona knew old recipes that delighted everyone. George found in her an attentive listener for his construction stories. Gradually, a genuine friendship blossomed. Meanwhile, at St. Lucia residence, Ramona's disappearance caused a commotion. Francis called Leo, who arrived at the scene in a panic. "What do you mean disappeared? Aren't you responsible for the residence?" "Mr. Evans, your mother is lucid and independent. We cannot prevent anyone from leaving," Francis defended herself. "We have already notified the police." Leo spent the rest of the day looking for Ramona in hospitals and police stations, without success. That night, he returned home defeated. "What are we going to do?" he asked Patricia, genuinely distressed. "The police will find her," his wife replied, less concerned than she should have been. "Your mother must have had a moment of confusion. She's probably in some public shelter." In the following days, Leo hired private investigators and spread posters throughout the city, but Ramona seemed to have been swallowed by Brighton. He couldn't imagine that his mother was just a few miles away in Whitehawk, discovering a new version of herself. It was around this time that Ramona finally decided to open the cedar box she had brought with her. One night after dinner, she excused herself from Adeline and George and retired to the small room she occupied. With trembling fingers, she removed the lace cloth protecting the box and turned the small key in the lock. Inside there were time-yellowed documents, old photographs, some modest jewelry, and a sealed envelope with the inscription, "To Ramona, when the time is right." The elegant handwriting belonged to her mother, Teresa Hamilton Montgomery, a name she hadn't heard in over 50 years. With trembling hands, Ramona opened the sealed envelope. The paper, yellowed with age, exuded a faint scent of lavender, the perfume her mother used. She carefully unfolded the letter and began to read. "My dearest daughter Ramona, if you are reading this letter, it means the time has come when you needed to resort to the contents of this box. I hope you have lived a full and happy life with the man you chose, far from the constraints of our family. There are truths I never told you and now need to reveal. You are not just Ramona Evans, the fisherman's wife. Your full name is Ramona Hamilton Montgomery, heir to one of Sussex's most traditional families. When you eloped with Sebastian, your father, Edward Hamilton Montgomery, publicly disinherited you, striking your name from the family documents. I, however, never stopped loving you. In secret, I maintained contact with lawyers to ensure your rights were preserved. Your father, proud as he was, never knew of the steps I took. In the box, you will find documents proving your identity and lineage. There is also the contact of Dr. Herman Sterling, our trusted lawyer for decades. He has instructions to help you if necessary. Know, my daughter, that I never regretted the love I felt for you, only the weakness I showed by not confronting your father when he cast you out of our lives. With all my love, your mother, Teresa." Tears streamed down Ramona's wrinkled face. Long-buried memories resurfaced. The mansion in Regency Square where she had grown up, piano lessons, debutante balls, the strictness of her banker father, the forbidden love for Sebastian, the gardener's son. The escape on a stormy night, the doors closing forever behind her. 50 years later, the circle seemed to complete itself in an ironic way. Expelled from the house she had built with Sebastian, she now rediscovered her aristocratic roots. In the envelope, there was also a yellowed business card with the name Dr. Herman Sterling, lawyer, and an address in downtown Brighton. No phone. The card was so old it predated the popularization of telephones. Ramona put everything back in the box, too disturbed to continue. That night she couldn't sleep, reliving her youth, the choices made, the paths taken. The next morning she decided to look for the lawyer, even without much hope of finding him alive after so many decades. She asked George to accompany her to the address indicated on the card. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, concerned. "If your son is looking for you, it might be dangerous to walk around the city center." "I need to do this, George," she replied, with a determination that surprised them both. "Some questions need answers." The address led them to an old building on East Street in Brighton's historic centre. To Ramona's surprise, the sign Sterling and Associates law firm was still there, although the office had been modernized. At the reception, a young secretary looked suspiciously at the improbable pair, an elderly woman in simple clothes and a middle-aged black man in worker's attire. "May I help you?" she asked with formal politeness. "I would like to speak with Dr. Herman Sterling," Ramona said. The secretary smiled condescendingly. Doctor, Herman passed away almost 20 years ago, madam. May I know the matter? Ramona hesitated. How to explain something she herself didn't fully understand. That's when she took out of her bag the envelope with the Hamilton-Montgomery family crest. The reaction was immediate. "One moment, please," the secretary said, suddenly respectful. She picked up the phone and dialed an internal extension. "Mr. Edward, there's a lady here with documents from the Hamilton-Montgomery family." "Yes, sir. Immediately." Minutes later, Ramona and George were led to a spacious room decorated with antique furniture and shelves full of legal books. A man of approximately 60, wearing an impeccable suit, rose to greet them. "I am Edward Sterling, Herman's son. How can I help you?" Ramona briefly explained her story, showing her mother's letter. The lawyer listened with growing attention, and his eyes widened when he heard her full name. "Mrs. Ramona Hamilton Montgomery," he repeated, incredulous. "Are you the missing heir of the Hamilton Montgomerys?" "I didn't disappear," she corrected with dignity. "I chose another path." Edward Sterling opened a drawer and took out an old folder. "My father mentioned your case several times, but I confess I thought it was just an office legend. We've been looking for you for years." "Why?" Ramona asked, confused. "Because your parents passed away, Mrs. Ramona. Your father 15 years ago, and your mother just 3 months ago, and they left everything to you." The revelation struck like lightning. Her parents, who had disinherited her, now named her heir to everything? What do you mean? "My father disinherited me." "Yes, initially," the lawyer agreed, leafing through the documents. "But your mother never gave up looking for you. After your father's death, she changed the will, including you as the sole beneficiary. Mrs. Teresa passed away in March, and since then we've been trying to locate you." George, who had remained silent until then, couldn't contain his surprise. "And how much is this inheritance worth?" Edward Sterling adjusted his glasses and consulted the papers. "According to the latest valuation, approximately £120 million. Ramona felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. She, who hours earlier had nowhere to live, was now one of the richest women in Sussex. "I need time to process all this," she finally said, "and I don't want my son to know for now." "I understand," the lawyer replied, "but we will need to regularize the situation as soon as possible. There are taxes, probate, abandoned properties. Can you take care of that for me? I will pay your fees as soon as I have access to the funds." "Don't worry about that now. Your mother made all the provisions. This firm has a fund designated exclusively for your interests." Edward smiled. "Mrs. Teresa never lost hope of finding you." Upon leaving the office, Ramona was in a state of shock. George, equally stunned, tried to assimilate what they had just discovered. "You're rich," he said with a nervous smile. "A millionaire." "It seems so," she replied, distracted. An avalanche of contradictory emotions overwhelmed her. Joy for her mother's unconditional love, sadness for not having reconciled with her in life, confusion about what to do with such a fortune. Meanwhile, in the Kemptown mansion, Leo faced his own dilemmas. 2 weeks after Ramona's disappearance, guilt consumed him. He barely slept, hardly ate, spending his days alternating between police stations and hospitals. "You need to calm down," Patricia said, more irritated than concerned. "The police are doing their job." "My mother has been missing for 15 days. How can I calm down?" Leo ran his hands through his hair, desperate. "What if she's—" "No, I can't even think about that." "Leo, be realistic. Your mother is over 70, left without money, without documents, and the chances of—" "Shut up," he shouted, surprising them both with the outburst. He had never spoken to Patricia like that. "Don't you dare finish that sentence." The tension between the couple grew daily. Leo began to clearly see the role Patricia had played in the decision to distance his mother. The doubts about Ramona's sanity, the comments about the burden she represented, the insinuations about the need to modernize the house, everything had been carefully orchestrated. That morning the phone rang. It was Francis, from St. Lucia residence. "Mr. Evans, I received some information that might help. One of the staff members remembered that your mother spoke a few times with a lady who sells tapioca on Brighton seafront. Maybe she knows something." Clinging to this fragile hope, Leo rushed to the Brighton seafront. After asking several street vendors, he found Mrs. Zelda, a black woman who sold tapioca under a colorful umbrella. Yes, I knew Mrs. Evans, Zelda confirmed. A very polite lady. She always came here in the first few days, bought tapioca, and looked at the sea. She said she lived at St. Lucia residence, but that she wasn't happy there. Do you know where she might have gone? Zelda scratched her chin, thoughtful. No, I don't. But the last day I saw her, it was raining heavily. She seemed lost, sitting on that bench there. After that, I didn't see her anymore. While Leo interviewed Zelda a few miles away, Ramona and Adeline talked in the small kitchen of the house in Whitehawk. Ramona had told everything about her visit to the lawyer. And what do you intend to do now? Adeline asked, serving coffee for both of them. I still don't know, Ramona confessed. It's a lot to process. I never cared about money or status. I fled from all that when I was young. But now... Now you have power, Adeline completed wisely. And power can be used for good. Ramona smiled, touched by her friend's simplicity and depth. You're right. Maybe it's time to settle some scores. That afternoon, Edward Sterling called George's mobile phone, the only contact they had provided. There was urgent news. Mr. Edward said your son is looking for you everywhere, George reported upon returning. Apparently, he went to the office to ask about the Evans family properties. By coincidence, he met one of the associates who learned of our visit yesterday. The lawyer didn't reveal anything, but he was intrigued. Your son left a card and asked to be informed if any clue about your whereabouts emerged. Ramona felt a tightening in her heart. The image of a desperate Leo searching for her throughout Brighton caused her a mixture of satisfaction and pain. He cares, she murmured to herself. Of course he cares, Adeline agreed. He's your son, but that doesn't erase what he did. I want to see him, Ramona suddenly decided. But not yet. First, I need to understand exactly what I have and what I can do. In the following days, Ramona immersed herself in meetings with Edward Sterling. The lawyer helped her understand the extent of her inheritance. In addition to money in bank accounts, there were properties in Brighton, in rural Sussex, and even in Portugal. Shares in companies, works of art, family jewels, an empire built by generations of the Hamilton Montgomerys. Your mother kept everything intact, hoping that one day you would return, Edward explained. She transformed the family mansion in Regency Square into a small private museum, preserving even your childhood room, exactly as it was the day you left. Silent tears streamed down Ramona's face upon hearing this. Teresa's love, hidden for decades under apparent rejection, finally revealed itself in all its fullness. It was at this moment that Ramona made a decision that would forever change the course of that story. She asked for paper and pen and began to dictate precise instructions to the lawyer. Edward Sterling listened with growing astonishment, but dared not question. In the end, he smiled admiringly. You are truly Mrs. Teresa's daughter. You have the same strength and determination. Ramona returned to Whitehawk with a serenity that surprised Adeline and George. There was a different light in her eyes, a mixture of peace and resolution. Tomorrow I'm going to meet my son, she announced during dinner. It's time to face the truth. The morning was clear when the black car parked in front of Adeline and George's house in Whitehawk. It was not a common vehicle in that working-class neighborhood, a latest model Mercedes-Benz with a uniformed driver who got out to open the rear door. Edward Sterling, impeccable in his navy blue suit, stepped out of the car, causing curiosity in the neighborhood. I'm ready, Ramona said, receiving him in the modest living room. She wore a simple but elegant outfit that Adeline had helped her choose at the local shop. Are you sure you want to do this today? The lawyer asked, still concerned about the emotional impact the meeting might have. Absolutely, she replied with determination. I've waited long enough. Adeline hugged her for a long time before her departure. Be strong, Mrs. Evans. Remember you have a home to return to, no matter what happens. Those simple words meant more than all the millions she now possessed. Ramona returned the hug with teary eyes and headed for the car. The plan was precise. Edward had contacted Leo, informing him he had news about his mother. They arranged a meeting at the law firm without revealing further details. Her son, desperate after weeks of fruitless searching, accepted immediately. When the car stopped in front of the building on East Street, Ramona took a deep breath. I'll go in through the back, as we agreed. I want to observe him first, to understand what he's really feeling. The Sterling firm had a meeting room with a mirrored glass panel. From the outside, one could see inside the room. From the inside, only a mirror on the wall. That's where Ramona would be. observing the initial meeting between Edward and her son. She didn't have to wait long. Promptly at 10 o'clock, Leo arrived. He looked haggard, with deep, dark circles under his eyes, and unshaven, the picture of worry. Ramona felt a pang in her chest, seeing her son's state, but remained firm in her purpose. "Mr. Evans, thank you for coming," Edward said, leading him to the meeting room. "Would you like some coffee?" "No, thank you. You said you have information about my mother. What have you found out? Is she well? Where is she?" The questions tumbled out, revealing the anxiety that consumed him. From the other side of the glass, Ramona observed every expression, every gesture, trying to discern what was genuine from what might be an act. "Your mother is alive and well," Edward calmly informed him. "But before revealing her whereabouts, I need to understand a few things. Why did Mrs. Ramona leave St. Lucia residence?" Leo ran his hands through his disheveled hair. "I'm not sure. Maybe she didn't adapt. Look, doctor, I just want to find her. I'm desperate." "I understand your concern, but I need to ask, why did your mother go to that residence in the first place? From what I understand, she had her own home where she lived for decades." Leo's discomfort was visible. He shifted in his chair, avoiding the lawyer's penetrating gaze. It was a family decision. The house needed renovations. My mother was already elderly. We thought it would be best for her." "You thought? Or did your wife think?" The direct question made Leo pale. "How do you know?" "Look, this is a family matter. I don't see how this helps find my mother." Edward opened a folder on the table. "Mr. Evans, I'll be direct. Your mother approached me voluntarily and told me everything. How she was practically expelled from her own home. How your wife constantly diminished her. How you gradually allowed this to happen." Leo stood up, indignant. "Are you accusing me of something? Who are you to judge my family? Where's my mother? I demand to see her now." From the other side of the glass, Ramona saw something that surprised her. Genuine tears in her son's eyes. They weren't tears of discovered guilt, but of deep pain, of someone truly suffering. It was enough. She signaled to the secretary who accompanied her, indicating she was ready to enter. The meeting room door opened, and Ramona calmly entered. The impact on Leo was immediate. He froze, as if he had seen a ghost, then ran towards her. "Mother! My God, Mother!" The words came out broken by sobs. He tried to hug her, but Ramona maintained a formal distance, raising her hand in a restrained gesture. "Not yet, Leo," she said, her voice firm but not harsh. "We need to talk first." Her son recoiled, stunned by the rejection, but nodded. They sat down again, with Edward discreetly leaving the room to give them privacy. "Mother, I looked for you everywhere. I thought the worst. Why did you run away? Why didn't you look for me?" Ramona observed him for a few moments before answering. The boy she had raised was there, behind the facade of the successful businessman. Vulnerable, confused, lost. "I ran away because that place wasn't my home, Leo, and I didn't look for you because I needed to understand some things first. About myself, about you, about our family. I did everything wrong, didn't I?" The question came out as a lament. "I let Patricia manipulate everything. I let her drive you away from home. I was a terrible son." There was sincerity in that confession. Ramona could feel it. But it wouldn't be that easy. "Yes, you made mistakes, son. Not by giving in to Patricia, but by not having the strength to defend what is right. The house I built with your father, where you grew up, where we lived our lives. It wasn't just a property. It was our history. And you allowed it to be erased." Leo lowered his head, accepting the criticism. "I know that now, but at that moment, I thought I was doing what was best for you. Patricia said the house was too big, that you needed special care, and you believed that the best thing for me would be to be separated from everything I love." Ramona's voice remained controlled, but laden with emotion. "Your father and I built that house when we had almost nothing. Every tile was chosen with love. Every piece of furniture has a story. And you simply took me out of there because your wife wanted a more modern environment. Mother, Words failed him. There was no possible justification. "Where is Patricia now?" Ramona asked, subtly changing the subject. Leo hesitated. "At home. She She doesn't know I'm here. Things between us haven't been good since you disappeared." Ramona nodded, as if confirming something she already suspected. "I need to tell you some things, Leo. Things about my past, about our family, that I never revealed." For the next 40 minutes, Ramona narrated her complete story. Her aristocratic origin, the forbidden romance with Sebastian, the escape, the disinheritance, the life rebuilt from scratch, and finally the recent discovery of the Hamilton-Montgomery inheritance. Leo listened to everything in a state of growing shock. The mother he knew, the simple, hard-working woman who had raised him, revealed herself as the heir to one of Sussex's most traditional families, now the owner of a fortune that made his seem insignificant. £120 million, he repeated, incredulous. "And you never knew about this?" "I never sought to know," she corrected him. "I chose a different life with your father. I never regretted it. And now, what are you going to do?" Ramona smiled for the first time since entering the room, a soft, almost melancholic smile. "I'm going to use this money to do what's right, Leo. Help those in need. Honor the memory of my parents and your father. Are you going to come home?" The question came out hesitantly, laden with hope. "Which home, son? The one you and Patricia are renovating to erase our memories." The blow hit Leo hard. "We can stop the renovation, Mother. We can leave everything as it was before." "No, we can't. Some things once broken don't go back to how they were." Ramona paused, carefully choosing her next words. "But we can build something new if you're willing." "Willing to what?" "To make difficult choices. To be honest with yourself and with me. To recognize that the money and status you value so much do not bring true happiness." Leo swallowed hard. "What are you asking?" "I'm not asking for anything, son. I'm offering a chance for redemption, for reconnection. But it will come with conditions." At that moment, Edward Sterling gently knocked on the door and entered. "Forgive the interruption, but I received an important call. Mrs. Patricia Evans is downstairs, demanding to see her husband. Apparently, she followed Mr. Leo here." Leo paled. "How did she find out? Does it matter?" Ramona asked, with unsettling calm. "Let her come up, Mr. Sterling. It's time for everyone to face the truth." While they waited, Leo seemed increasingly nervous. "Mother, maybe we should talk alone first, before—" "No, Leo. No more hiding things. No more half-truths." Minutes later, Patricia stormed into the meeting room. She was impeccably dressed and made up, as always, but there was a barely contained fury in her eyes. Upon seeing Ramona, she stopped abruptly. "Mrs. Evans, you were here all along." The tone of false concern fooled no one. "We were so worried. Why didn't you tell us where you were?" "Hello, Patricia," Ramona replied with icy formality. "Because I didn't want to be found. Not yet. I needed time to understand some things." Patricia looked confusedly at her husband, then at Edward, realizing that something much bigger was happening there. "I don't understand. What is this place? Who is this man? Leo, what's going on?" "Patricia, this is Mr. Edward Sterling, my maternal family's lawyer," Ramona explained, emphasizing the last words. "He is helping me manage my inheritance." "Inheritance? What inheritance?" Leo, recovering some composure, intervened. "Patricia, my mother just told me things that change everything. She is Ramona Hamilton Montgomery, heir to the Hamilton Montgomery family." The name had a visible impact on Patricia. As the daughter of a banker, even a failed one, she was well aware of Sussex's great fortunes. "Hamilton Montgomery," she repeated, incredulous. "The owners of traditional bank?" "Among other investments," Edward confirmed. "Mrs. Ramona is now the sole heir to an estate valued at approximately £120 million. Patricia staggered, needing to lean on the table. All her previous arrogance gave way to a mixture of shock and calculation. Ramona could almost see the gears turning behind those ambitious eyes. "Mrs. Evans, this is extraordinary," she finally managed to say. "You must be so happy. And we, as a family, are here to support you in everything you need." The hypocrisy was so evident that Leo couldn't help a bitter laugh. "Family? Are you talking about family now, Patricia? After convincing everyone that my mother was a burden, that she should be kept away from us?" "Leo!" Patricia's indignation seemed genuine. "How can you say that? I always treated your mother with the utmost respect." Enough with the lies, Ramona interrupted, with an authority that silenced everyone. I'm tired of falsehoods, hidden interests, manipulations. I want the truth, here and now. At that moment, something extraordinary happened. The apparent fragility of the elderly woman gave way to a powerful presence, as if the aristocratic blood of the Hamilton Montgomerys finally flowed with full force through her veins. It was the same woman, with the same wrinkles and white hair, but there was an aura of command that made even the experienced Edward Sterling straighten his posture. The silence that followed Ramona's words weighed like lead in the meeting room. Patricia, for the first time since entering the Evans family, seemed genuinely disconcerted. Leo alternated his gaze between his mother and his wife, as if watching a silent duel. "Truth?" Patricia repeated, regaining some composure. "I don't know what you're talking about, Mrs. Evans. I always wanted the best for our family." "Then let's start with the most basic truth," Ramona continued, imperturbable. "Did you marry my son for the love you felt for him, or for the financial position he held?" The question, straight to the heart of the matter, made Patricia pale. "What kind of question is that? Of course I'm married for love. How can you insinuate?" "I'm not insinuating anything, I'm asking directly," Ramona cut in, "because all I've seen in recent years is a calculating woman manipulating my son to push away everything and everyone who could threaten her plans, including his mother." Leo seemed increasingly uncomfortable. "Mother, maybe we should—" "No, Leo. Enough avoiding confrontations. That's how we got to this point." Ramona looked directly at her daughter-in-law. "Patricia, when you started suggesting I go to a place more suitable for my age, what did you really mean?" Cornered, Patricia opted for a half-truth. "I was just thinking of your well-being, Mrs. Evans. That house is too big. It has stairs. It can be dangerous. And the fact that without me you would have total control over decisions related to the house and the family assets had no influence?" The question was rhetorical, and everyone in the room knew it. "That's absurd." Patricia stood up, indignant. "Leo, are you going to allow your mother to speak to me this way? After everything I've been through in recent weeks, looking for her, worried, looking for me." Ramona raised her eyebrows. "Mr. Sterling, could you tell us who was actually involved in the search?" The lawyer consulted some notes. "According to the reports from the investigators we hired to monitor the situation, Mr. Leo visited hospitals, shelters, police stations, and distributed posters around the city. Mrs. Patricia, on the other hand—" He paused significantly. "There are no records of direct participation in the searches." "That means nothing," Patricia protested. "Someone had to take care of the house, answer calls in case Mrs. Evans got in touch." Leo, who until then had remained divided, began to see the situation more clearly. "Patricia, every time I mentioned intensifying the search, hiring more investigators, you said I was exaggerating, that my mother would probably show up on her own. Because I didn't want to feed your despair. You were devastated, not sleeping, not eating properly. Or because you knew that if my mother didn't appear, eventually I would give up, and we would go ahead with your plans for the house." Leo's direct accusation made Patricia recoil. It was the first time he had confronted her this way, and it caught her off guard. Trying to regain control of the situation, she completely changed her strategy. "This is all a terrible misunderstanding," she said, with tears in her eyes, tears that Ramona couldn't determine if they were real or calculated. "I just wanted a better life for us, Leo. You worked so hard, you deserve a house that reflects your success, not a relic of the past. And Mrs. Evans deserved a place with proper care, not a house where she could fall down the stairs at any moment." Edward Sterling discreetly cleared his throat. "If you'll permit me, I think we need to focus on practical matters now. Mrs. Ramona has made some important decisions that will affect everyone, and I believe it's time to share them." Leo and Patricia turned their attention to the lawyer, while Ramona nodded, giving him permission to continue. "Mrs. Ramona has instructed me to implement several measures related to her inheritance," Edward began, opening a folder of documents. "First, she has decided to donate 40% of the total value to establish a foundation that will support vulnerable elderly people in Sussex. The Sebastian Evans Foundation will operate in the former Hamilton Montgomery mansion in the Regency Square neighborhood." Patricia could not disguise her shock. 40% of 120 million meant that almost 50 million would be allocated to charity. Another 30% will be held in conservative investments, whose income will sustain the foundation and ensure Mrs. Ramona's comfort for the rest of her life," the lawyer continued. 15% will be distributed among smaller causes, including scholarships for needy young people and support for artisanal fishermen, in honor of Mr. Sebastian's humble origins. "And the remaining 15%, Leo asked, mentally calculating that approximately 18 million still remained. Edward looked at Ramona, who took the floor. "That amount will be yours, Leo, but with conditions." Patricia, who had been downcast since the announcement of the massive donation, immediately lifted her head, interested in the conversation again. "What conditions?" Leo asked, cautiously. "First, you will have to resign from your position as CEO of your company for 1 year," Ramona calmly replied. "During that period, you will work as a volunteer at the foundation, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day." "What?" Patricia's indignation was immediate. "That's ridiculous. Leo built that company from scratch." "With the initial money I got by selling my family jewels, including my wedding ring," Ramona corrected. "Something you, Leo, apparently forgot." Her son lowered his eyes, ashamed. It was true, the seed capital for his first venture came from the sale of the few jewels his mother still possessed from her single days. "Second," Ramona continued, "you will participate in weekly family therapy sessions with me. We need to rebuild bridges that were burned, understand how we reached this point." Leo nodded, surprised by the sensibility of the proposal. "That seems fair." "And third," Ramona paused, looking directly at Patricia, "you will need to reevaluate your marriage." "What?" Patricia stood up, furious. "You can't interfere in our lives like that." "I'm not telling you to separate," Ramona clarified. "I'm telling you to reevaluate. If there is true love between you, it will become evident during this year of transformations. If there isn't, better to find out now than waste more years in a relationship based on interests." Leo remained silent, absorbing everything. Finally he spoke. "And the house in Kemptown?" "Oh, yes," Ramona remembered. "I forgot to mention. The house will remain intact. No renovations that erase our history. You can continue living there if you wish, but the property will officially return to my name." "But the renovation has already started," Patricia protested. "We've already spent a fortune on architects, materials. Money isn't a problem now, is it?" The irony in Ramona's voice was soft but cutting. "The renovation will be stopped immediately, and the house restored to its original state, as much as possible." Edward, who observed everything with professional interest, added, "All documents are already prepared. If Mr. Leo accepts the conditions, the 18 million will be transferred to a trust account, released in installments over 5 years, upon fulfillment of the established conditions." The silence that followed was heavy, laden with contradictory emotions. Leo seemed lost in deep thought. Patricia looked from one to the other, as if evaluating her options. Ramona remained serene, with the dignity of someone who knows exactly what she is doing. "I need time to think," Leo finally said. "Time?" Patricia couldn't contain her indignation. "What is there to think about? Your mother is trying to control our lives. This is emotional blackmail. It's manipulation. Leo, please, don't you see what she's doing?" "What I'm seeing," he replied, with surprising firmness, "is that my mother is offering me a chance at redemption, a chance I might not deserve." Turning to Ramona, he continued, "Mother, I accept your conditions, all of them, not for the money, but because you are right. I lost my way at some point. I forgot what truly matters." Patricia paled. "Leo, you can't be serious. Are you going to abandon everything we've built? Are you going to let her dictate the rules of our lives?" "No, Patricia. I'm going to rebuild what I destroyed, and you are invited to make this journey with me. But if you prefer another path, I will understand." The choice was clear now. Either Patricia accepted the new reality, or the marriage would end right there. The unspoken ultimatum hung in the air, as clear as the genuine tears that now streamed down her face. "I love you," she said in a last effort. "I always have." "Perhaps you do," Leo replied softly. "But love is not possession. It is not control. I learned that the hard way." At that moment, something seemed to break inside Patricia. The facade of perfection, carefully maintained for years, completely crumbled. Between sobs, she confessed, "All I wanted was security. My father lost everything. We were destitute. I had to work as a saleswoman to pay for college. When I met you, I saw a chance to never go through that again. The unexpected vulnerability caught everyone by surprise, especially Ramona. There was truth in those words, a truth born of fear and insecurity. "Patricia," Ramona said in a softer voice than before, "I understand your fear. I too have been afraid of losing everything, but I built a life based on love, not fear, and in the end, love is always worth more." Edward, sensing the emotional intensity of the moment, diplomatically suggested, "Perhaps we should continue this conversation another day. There is much to process for everyone." Ramona agreed. "Yes, I think we've said enough for today. Leo, you have a week to arrange your leave from the company. After that, we will begin our new arrangement." "And where will you stay in the meantime?" Leo asked, concerned. "With my friends in Whitehawk," she replied simply. "They took me in when I had nothing. They showed me what true kindness is. I will stay with them until I feel it's time to move on." Patricia, who had somewhat recomposed herself, made one last attempt. "Mrs. Heavens, can we start over? I know I made mistakes, but we can build a better relationship." The look Ramona gave her daughter-in-law was not one of anger or resentment, but of careful evaluation. "Perhaps, Patricia, time will tell if your words are sincere. As the saying goes, it is in adversity that true friends are known." Upon leaving the law firm, each went their separate way, Ramona in the car with Edward, returning to Whitehawk, Leo and Patricia, side by side but emotionally distant, heading for the Kemptown house, which now seemed a battlefield of conflicting identities. On the way back, Ramona observed the Brighton landscape from the car window. The city that had seen her born rich, flee for love, build a modest life, and now return in such extraordinary circumstances. Life truly had strange ways of closing circles. "You were very wise," Edward commented, breaking the silence. "Many, in your position, would seek revenge. Revenge is a dish best served cold, they say," Ramona replied. "But I discovered I prefer warm food, served with love, even if seasoned with some difficult lessons." Upon arriving at Adeline and George's house, Ramona was greeted with warm hugs and anxious questions about the meeting. She told everything in detail, while they had coffee in the cozy kitchen. "And now, Mrs. Evans," George asked after hearing the whole story, "with all that money, you could buy a palace. Why do you still want to stay here with us?" Ramona smiled, taking George and Adeline's calloused hands in hers. "Because here I found what money cannot buy. True friendship, unconditional welcome, love without conditions. You restored my faith in humanity when I needed it most." Adeline, always practical, wiped away a stubborn tear and stood up to serve more coffee. "Well, know that this house will always be yours too, with or without millions." That night, as she prepared for bed in the small back room that was now hers, Ramona thought of Sebastian. What would he say about all this? He would probably laugh at that irony of fate. She, who had renounced a fortune for love, now a millionaire in old age. "See, my dear," she whispered into the dark, "it seems we can't escape who we really are, but I promise to use this money well, to make the difference you always wanted to make in this world." And so, between memories and plans for the future, Ramona fell asleep peacefully, while Brighton swayed to the rhythm of its ancestral drums. The following months were of profound transformations for all involved. As promised, Leo left his position as CEO of the construction company he had founded, temporarily handing over direction to his vice president. The announcement caused astonishment in the Brighton real estate market. Economic newspapers speculated about financial crises or health problems, unable to understand why a businessman at the peak of success would voluntarily abandon everything. The truth, however, was much simpler and much more complex at the same time. Leo was rediscovering the meaning of the word value. His first day at the Sebastian Evans Foundation was a shock of reality. The old Hamilton Montgomery mansion in the Regency Square neighborhood had been completely adapted to receive vulnerable elderly people. Where ballrooms once stood, there were now spacious common rooms. Luxurious bedrooms became functional and cozy dormitories. Ornamental gardens gave way to therapeutic vegetable gardens. "Your work here will not be administrative," Ramona explained, guiding him through the place. "I want you to get to know each elderly person. Listen to their stories, understand their needs. Start by helping in the kitchen, then move on to maintenance, then to the cultural activities sector." "Kitchen?" Leo looked at his own hands, which for years had only touched documents and computer keyboards. "Mother, I don't know if I can—" "Yes, you can," she interrupted firmly. "All work has dignity, Leo. Your father knew that. He spent his life getting up before the sun to fish, came back with hands cut by salt and ropes but never complained. And he was happy, much happier than many rich people I knew." The first week was humbling and revealing. Leo, accustomed to giving orders, now peeled potatoes, washed pots, swept floors. The other employees, initially suspicious of the owner's son, soon realized there were no privileges. He sweated and tired like anyone else. At night, he returned home to Kemptown exhausted, with sore muscles he didn't even know he had. The renovation had been interrupted, and slowly the house returned to its original state. The Portuguese tiles reappeared under the modern paint, the wooden floor was restored, the walls rebuilt. Patricia, surprisingly, had not left. After days of intense discussions and tears, she decided to stay and try. "It won't be easy," she admitted, in a rare display of vulnerability. "I don't know if I can be the person you and your mother expect me to be." "No one is asking you to be someone else," Leo replied, with newfound maturity. "Just to be honest, with yourself and with us." The family therapy sessions, led by a psychologist specializing in intergenerational conflicts, were intense and often painful. Truths buried for years came to light, wounds were exposed, old scars revisited. "What hurt the most," Ramona confessed in one of these sessions, "wasn't leaving the house. It was realizing that my only son no longer saw me as a priority, that I had become a problem to be solved. And what scared me the most," Leo admitted, "was seeing how much I had become like the men I always criticized, obsessed with status, with appearances, willing to sacrifice relationships in the name of success." Patricia, initially resistant to the sessions, gradually began to participate more actively. "I grew up afraid of being poor," she revealed on a particularly emotional afternoon. "My father was a banker. We had everything. When he went bankrupt, I saw my mother humiliated, begging for jobs, selling jewelry to pay for school. I swore I would never go through that again. That fear turned me into someone I sometimes don't recognize." The process was not linear. There were days of reconciliation and mutual understanding, followed by relapses into old patterns. Patricia still struggled with her ingrained materialism, Leo with his search for external approval, Ramona with the fear of being abandoned again. Meanwhile, the Sebastian Evans Foundation gained a life of its own. The model of humanized care for the elderly, combining medical care with cultural activities and valuing life stories, attracted the attention of the media and specialists in gerontology. Ramona, initially reluctant to appear publicly, became an eloquent spokesperson for the cause of elderly rights. "Aging is not a disease, it's an achievement," she said in interviews. "Each wrinkle represents a story, an experience, a lesson. Our society needs to relearn to value the wisdom that comes with age." With her personal story, the rich girl who fled for love, built a modest life, and rediscovered her aristocratic roots in old age, Ramona became a kind of improbable celebrity in Brighton. Newspapers called her the Lady of Solidarity, and politicians lined up to associate their image with hers. "I don't understand all this fuss," she commented to Adeline, as they prepared akaraje in the kitchen of the house in Whitehawk, an activity she maintained religiously, despite new commitments. "I'm just doing what's right." "What's right has become a rarity, Mrs. Evans," her friend wisely replied. "People have become so accustomed to selfishness that they are surprised when someone acts with genuine generosity." In the 6th month of the year of probation, as Leo jokingly called his experience at the foundation, an unexpected event shook the family. Dr. Edward Sterling, during a routine document review, found clues about the whereabouts of a distant cousin of Ramona's, Augustus Hamilton, son of an uncle who had emigrated to London in the 1950s. "He is a university professor, a specialist in English literature," the lawyer informed, showing a photo of a 70-year-old man with a white beard and kind eyes. "From what I could gather, he leads a modest life, dedicated to books and academia." Ramona was deeply moved by the discovery. "My cousin Augustus. We played together as children, before his family moved to London. He sent me letters for a while, then we lost contact. Would you like to meet him?" Edward asked. "More than anything, he's the only blood relative I have left." Arrangements were made quickly. Augustus, equally surprised and moved to learn of his long-lost cousin, immediately accepted the invitation to visit Brighton. When they finally met in the Foundation's garden, the embrace between the septuagenarian cousins moved even the toughest staff members. "Ramona, my dear cousin," he said between tears and laughter, "you still have the same determined eyes you had as a girl when you said you were going to change the world." "And you still have the same passion for books," she replied, noticing the reading glasses hanging from a chain around his neck. "Remember how we used to read Lord Byron hidden in the orchard?" Augustus's presence brought a new dimension to Ramona's life, someone who shared her childhood memories, who had known her parents, who understood where she came from. The long conversations about the past helped her reconcile the different phases of her life. "Aunt Teresa never got over your departure," Augustus recounted one afternoon as they had tea on the veranda. "She kept your room intact, with the books and dolls exactly as you left them. In recent years, she spoke of you constantly, worried if you had been happy, if it had been worth it." "It was worth every minute," Ramona replied, with teary eyes. "Sebastian gave me a love that many never know in a lifetime. And Leo, despite everything, is a good man. He's just lost, as I have been at times." Augustus became a frequent presence at the Foundation, organizing literary soirees and writing workshops for the elderly residents. His erudition without pedantry and ability to tell fascinating stories made him beloved by all. It was at his suggestion that Ramona finally decided to write her memoirs. "Your story doesn't belong only to you," Augustus argued. "It's a piece of Sussex history, of England, of women's struggle for independence. It needs to be told." Thus, on Sunday mornings, Ramona dedicated herself to dictating her memories into a recorder, which Augustus then transcribed into text. The project, initially private, eventually attracted the attention of a national publisher, interested in publishing the autobiography of the woman they called the revolutionary aristocrat. Meanwhile, Leo progressed in his journey of self-discovery. After 3 months in the kitchen and another 3 in maintenance, he was assigned to the Foundation's cultural sector. There, he discovered an unexpected talent for connecting with the elderly through games and group activities. "You have your father's charisma," Ramona observed, seeing him organize a domino championship that enlivened the institution. Sebastian also knew how to make people feel valued, how to bring joy to environments. The comment touched Leo deeply. He had always considered himself more like the Hamilton-Montgomery side, pragmatic, determined, with a talent for business. The idea of having inherited qualities from his fisherman father, whom he admired but considered naively simple, was comforting and challenging at the same time. At home, changes were also visible. Patricia, to everyone's surprise, including her own, found herself passionate about interior design with a focus on historical preservation. She started a course in the area and began volunteering in the restoration of the Kemptown house, now with a new perspective, no longer seeking to erase the past, but to integrate it harmoniously with contemporary elements. "I never thought I'd say this," she commented to Ramona, as they discussed the restoration of an old stained glass window. "But there's a beauty in these objects that tell stories, that carry memories." Ramona smiled, seeing the seed of genuine change in that observation. "Objects are like people, Patricia. The most interesting ones are those with scars, imperfections, marks of time. Perfection can be beautiful, but it's imperfection that makes us unique." The therapy sessions continued, now with less tension and more openness. The psychologist noted the family's progress and encouraged them to establish new communication patterns based on honesty and mutual vulnerability. "What I see here," he commented in a session, "is a rare example of how family conflicts can be catalysts for profound transformation when there is a willingness for inner work." In the 9th month of the process, Leo surprised everyone with an announcement. He would not return to the CEO position even after the stipulated period ended. "I discovered that I'm not happy managing a company. I want to work directly with people, make a difference in daily life, not just through numbers on spreadsheets." His plan was to create a social responsibility department at the construction company focused on humanized urbanization and affordable housing for the elderly. He had already spoken with the board and received enthusiastic support, partly because his story with the foundation had generated positive publicity for the company. Patricia, initially skeptical, eventually supported the decision, "You seem more alive now, more present," she admitted. "And frankly, that job was slowly killing you. You came home exhausted. We barely talked." It was true. The marriage, which seemed doomed to failure months before, showed surprising signs of renewal. With Leo more emotionally connected and Patricia more authentic, they rediscovered each other, as if they were different people. And, in a way, they were. One afternoon, after a particularly productive meeting with architects who would adapt the mansion to accommodate more residents, Ramona felt an unusual fatigue. She asked to be taken back to Adeline and George's house, where she still lived, despite offers of more luxurious accommodations. "Are you all right?" George asked, concerned to see her paler than usual. "Do you want me to call a doctor?" "No, my friend. I just need to rest a bit. It's been intense months." The next morning, however, Ramona couldn't get up. The weakness was generalized, and a dull pain in her chest alarmed Adeline, who immediately called an ambulance. St. Raphael's Hospital, one of Brighton's most modern, received Ramona with all the attention her now famous name demanded. An entire wing was practically isolated to ensure her privacy, while a team of specialists performed a complete battery of tests. Leo arrived in minutes, abandoning an important meeting as soon as he received Adeline's call. He found his mother already accommodated in a spacious room with a sea view. Despite her pallor and obvious fatigue, she maintained the serene dignity that had become her hallmark. "What happened, Mother?" he asked, holding her wrinkled hand in his. "What did the doctors say?" "They're still doing tests, son. But don't worry, it must just be tiredness. These last few months have been very intense." It was partially true. At 72, Ramona had been involved in more activities and projects than many young people: the rapidly expanding foundation, family therapy sessions, the reunion with her cousin Augustus, her memoirs being written, frequent interviews for newspapers and TV. Her body naturally needed a rest. But there was more. When the cardiologist finally arrived with the results, the grave expression on his face said it all. "Mrs. Evans, your heart is very overburdened. There is significant obstruction in the coronary arteries and signs of advanced cardiomyopathy." "In simpler English, doctor?" she asked with a half-smile. "You need an urgent coronary bypass, and even with the surgery you will need to drastically reduce your activity level." Leo paled. The idea of losing his mother now, when they had finally reconnected, was unbearable. "What are the risks of the surgery, doctor?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. For a person of Mrs. Evans's age, with her pre-existing conditions, the risks are considerable. But without the surgery, it was not necessary to complete the sentence. Ramona nodded, perfectly understanding the situation. "When can we do it, then?" "We need to stabilize you first. I'd say in 3 or 4 days." When the doctor left, Leo finally let the tears flow freely. Ramona reached out and touched his face tenderly. "Don't despair, my son. I've lived long enough not to be afraid of what comes next. If it's my time, I will depart in peace." "Don't talk like that, Mother. You're going to have this surgery, and you're going to recover. We have so many plans, so many projects together." Ramona smiled with that quiet wisdom of those who have seen many springs. It's good to have plans, but sometimes life has its own plans for us. News of Ramona's hospitalization spread quickly. In a few hours, the hospital corridor was filled with reporters, curious onlookers, and people who had been touched in some way by her story or the Foundation's work. George and Adeline were the first to arrive, bringing a rosary and candles they had lit at St. Nicholas Church. Patricia appeared soon after, with flowers and a genuinely concerned expression. Dr. Edward Sterling brought important documents that Ramona insisted on reviewing, even against medical advice. Augustus came with poetry books he would read to her in the coming days. "What a fuss over an old lady like me," Ramona joked, seeing the commotion around her. "An old lady who changed many people's lives," Augustus corrected, affectionately holding her hand. The days leading up to the surgery were intense. Ramona, fearing the worst even if she didn't admit it, decided to put all her affairs in order. She revised her will, ensuring that the foundation would continue regardless of what happened to her. She recorded personal messages for important people in her life. And most significantly, she requested a private meeting with Leo and Patricia. "You both have grown so much in recent months," she said, when they were gathered in the hospital room. "Leo, I see in you now the son I always dreamed of. Not for material success, but for integrity, for the ability to recognize mistakes and change. And you, Patricia, surprised me. There was more strength and authenticity in you than I imagined. The emotional couple simply nodded. If this surgery doesn't go well— Mother, please, Leo interrupted. Let me finish, son. We need to face all possibilities. If I don't survive, I want you to continue the Foundation's work. And more importantly, I want you to continue the inner work you've started. Don't go back to old patterns. Don't let money and status blind you again. We won't, Mrs. Evans, Patricia promised, with a sincerity that surprised even herself. You taught us lessons we will never forget. On the eve of the surgery, a surprise moved Ramona to tears. The residents of the Sebastian Evans Foundation, some in wheelchairs, others supported by walkers, organized a vigil in front of the hospital. They sang and prayed, holding signs with messages of love and gratitude for the woman who had transformed their later years into an experience of dignity and appreciation. Do you see that? Ramona said, pointing out the window. These people are not here for the money I donated or the foundation I created. They are here because they felt truly seen, respected, loved. In the end, that's all that matters. The surgery was scheduled for the next morning. When the time came, Ramona was surprisingly calm. She kissed each of her loved ones, Leo, Patricia, Adeline, George, Augustus, Edward, and was taken to the operating room with a serene smile on her face. The hours that followed were the longest in Leo's life. Sitting in the waiting room, he alternated between moments of hope and despair. Patricia, by his side, offered silent but constant support. George and Adeline prayed incessantly, while Augustus quietly read passages from Lord Byron, Ramona's favorite author. Finally, after 6 hours of tension, the surgeon appeared, still wearing his cap and mask. Everyone immediately stood up. The surgery was successful, he announced, prompting collective sighs of relief. Mrs. Evans is a strong woman. The next 48 hours will be critical, but I am optimistic. Recovery, as expected, was slow and required patience. Ramona had to remain in the hospital for almost a month, alternating between periods of improvement and small setbacks. Her advanced age made the process more challenging, but her determination impressed the medical team. I've never seen such a cooperative patient, the head nurse commented. She follows all recommendations to the letter, does all the exercises, never complains. My mother has always been like that, Leo explained. Disciplined and resilient. She went through things in life that would make many give up, but she always found the strength to continue. During the recovery period, an idea began to form in Ramona's mind. Upon being discharged, she surprised everyone with an announcement. She would not return to Adeline and George's house, nor to the Foundation's mansion. She would move into the Kemptown house with Leo and Patricia. Are you sure, Mother? Leo asked, concerned. You always said that house held painful memories now. Memories are what we make of them, son, she replied wisely. That house was a happy home for decades. Then it became a place of rejection. Now it can become a symbol of reconciliation and a new beginning. The decision was celebrated with a special lunch in the backyard of the house, under the mango trees Sebastian had planted decades earlier. Adeline and George were guests of honor, as were Augustus, Edward, and several Foundation residents. Patricia, surprising everyone with her newly discovered culinary talent, prepared several traditional Sussex dishes. I learned from the best, she said, smiling at Adeline. Who would have thought that I, who only knew how to order food by phone, would be here cooking moqueca and acarajé? Lunch extended into the afternoon, with stories, laughter, and some emotional tears. Ramona observed everything with deep contentment. Her life circle was closing in an unexpected but perfect way. 3 months after the surgery, another important celebration, the inauguration of the new wing of the Sebastian Evans Foundation, which would double its service capacity. With the presence of the Governor, Secretaries of State, and important figures in Sussex society, the event received extensive media coverage. Ramona, against medical recommendations to avoid strong emotions, insisted on giving a speech. Standing, leaning slightly on Leo's arm, she spoke with a clarity and strength that moved everyone. This foundation is not about me or the money I inherited. It is about dignity, about the right to grow old with respect, to be seen as a complete human being, not as a problem to be solved. Every elderly person we welcome here has a story, has wisdom to share, has love to give and receive. Enthusiastic applause interrupted her words. When silence returned, she continued, "But today we also celebrate something beyond this new wing. We celebrate personal transformations, reconciliations, new beginnings. My son Leo and my daughter-in-law Patricia are here today, not as heirs waiting for their share, but as partners in this project. They have learned, as I have learned, that the true value of life lies in what we give, not in what we accumulate." Leo, moved, hugged his mother as the audience applauded again. Patricia, beside them, held an envelope that would be opened at the end of the ceremony. It contained the project to expand the foundation to other cities in Sussex, a development she had secretly worked on in recent months. The next day, the Brighton Evening Star headlined on its front page, "The Lady of Solidarity transforms not just lives, but hearts." The report highlighted not only the foundation's work, but Ramona's extraordinary personal journey, from family rejection to reconciliation, from illness to recovery, from disinheritance to philanthropy. A full year had passed since the day Ramona had been practically expelled from the Kemptown house. Now, on a warm Brighton summer night, she sat on the veranda watching the sunset over the sea. The house was full of life again, not just with her presence, but with the renewed energy of Leo and Patricia, and with the frequent visits of Adeline, George, Augustus, and Foundation residents. Leo had kept his word. Even after the year of probation ended, he continued working in the construction company's social responsibility department, developing dignified housing projects for low-income elderly people. Patricia, in turn, had found her calling in historical heritage preservation and now coordinated a project to restore old mansions in the lanes. The inheritance money, which could have been a source of disputes and resentments, had become an instrument of social transformation. The Sebastian Evans Foundation was nationally recognized as a model for humanized elderly care, and Ramona constantly received invitations for lectures and consultancies, most of which she declined, following medical recommendations to slow down. "A penny for your thoughts," Leo said, joining his mother on the veranda with 2 cups of lemon balm tea. Ramona smiled, accepting the drink. "I was thinking about how life takes curious turns. If I hadn't been expelled from this house, perhaps I would never have discovered my inheritance. If I hadn't gotten sick that day, perhaps I would never have been welcomed by Adeline and George. If I hadn't discovered the inheritance, perhaps you would never have realized the wrong path you were taking." "Do you think everything happens for a reason?" he asked. "I don't know if there's a grand cosmic plan," she replied thoughtfully, "but I know we can find meaning even in the most painful experiences, if we have the courage to face the truth and the humility to change." Leo nodded, understanding the depth of that simple reflection. They remained silent for a few minutes, just contemplating the sky that was tinged with orange and purple. "Do you know what your father used to say when he came back from fishing after a difficult day at sea?" Ramona asked suddenly. "What?" "The sea teaches you that there's no point fighting the tide. Sometimes you have to surrender to survive. But surrendering isn't giving up, it's accepting, adapting, finding another way." She paused, letting the words echo. "I think I finally understood what he meant." At that moment, Patricia joined them, bringing an old photo album she had found while organizing the attic. The 3 generations of the family sat together, recalling stories, laughing at forgotten moments, honoring the journey that had brought them there. Later, when Leo and Patricia had already retired, Ramona remained on the veranda. She took Sebastian's wedding ring from her pocket, which she always carried with her. Looking at the starry sky, she whispered, "See, my dear, in the end, love won. Not the way we expected, but it won." A gentle breeze rustled the mango tree leaves, as if in response. Ramona smiled, knowing that whatever the future held, her circle was complete. She had lost and found her blood family. She had created a new family with Adeline and George. She had touched hundreds of lives through the foundation. The money, which for many would be the center of the story, had revealed itself to be merely an instrument. Important, yes, but secondary to the true treasure she had discovered, the ability to transform pain into wisdom, rejection into acceptance, resentment into forgiveness. The next morning, the Kemptown house awoke to the aroma of fresh coffee and freshly baked cheese buns. Patricia, who had never imagined becoming a dedicated homemaker, now found pleasure in household tasks, not out of submission or obligation, but out of choice and connection with a tradition she had once scorned. Leo prepared for another day at the foundation, where he would coordinate a memory workshop with the residents, a project inspired by his mother's autobiographical writing sessions with Augustus. And Ramona, sitting at the kitchen table with the now restored Portuguese tiles, looked at everything with the serenity of someone who had finally found her place in the world. Not the place that money could buy, but the place that love had built, brick by brick, forgiveness by forgiveness, embrace by embrace. "Good morning, family," she said, when everyone gathered for breakfast. The word family, once so worn and empty, now carried a profound and true meaning. It was a promise fulfilled, a circle closed, a story of redemption that would continue to be written for generations. The brightened sun, generous as ever, streamed through the open windows, illuminating not only the room, but also the reconciled hearts of those who had learned, the hard way, that in the end only love remains. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope that Mrs. Ramona's story and her journey of forgiveness and reconciliation have touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey through the most beautiful English narratives, we have prepared a special list with equally captivating stories. Find it here by clicking on your left. If you were moved by this story of redemption and second chances, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life and family relationships, with authentic characters and situations that make us reflect on our own values. What would you do in Ramona's place? Would you have the same capacity to forgive and transform pain into something positive? Share your thoughts in the comments. We look forward to reading your reflections and continuing this very special conversation with you. See you in the next story.